Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's board meeting, including those joining us via live stream. It's great to be visiting the Missouri S&T campus again. It's been a couple of years since we've been here. Chancellor Jakoyne, thank you so much for hosting us. To begin our meeting today, I'd like to ask Curator Hobrock to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Will we all please stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Curator Hobrock. Okay, we'll start things off this morning with the board chair's report. And good morning, and thank you all for joining us for today's board meeting. Thank you to Chancellor Jakoyne and the S&T team for hosting us this morning. It's always a pleasure to visit Rolla. And a hearty welcome to Mark Mangini as our General Counsel. This is his first board meeting, and I know we're all glad to have him here. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
I also want to recognize our esteemed colleague, Marcy Graham. As many of you know, he has served this board for many years and has completed his current term. Like Curator Brunswick, he has continued to serve as new curators have not yet been appointed. Very recently, Curator Graham resigned from the board due to personal reasons. Fortunately, we've had the opportunity to recognize his vast contributions to this board and to the University of Missouri at our previous meetings. But I also would like to take this time again to thank Marcy for his service and his friendship with so many of us in this room. Thank you, Curator Graham. As for practical matters, Curator Graham served on the Audit, Compliance, and Ethics Committee, which will continue with 3 members until new curators are appointed. He also served on the Health Affairs Committee, and Chair Robin Winokur and I have asked Curator Jeff Lehman to fill that opening. Now we'll get started with today's agenda. As I stated in my last board chair report, I will be sharing important work done by our university researchers as well as the students those projects support. First, however, I want to recognize the latest Curators Distinguished Professor from Missouri S&T. Dr. Henry Pernicka is a professor of aerospace engineering. He earned his PhD from Purdue University. He joined S&T in 2001 and has been an incredible educator from day one. He has won several outstanding teaching awards from S&T and was honored with outstanding teaching awards from the American Society of Engineering Education, Midwest Section in 2006 and 2007. In 2005, Dr. Pernicka has secured more than $3 million in research funding, largely in grants from NASA and the United States Air Force. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Pernicka on being recognized as the Curators Distinguished Professor from Missouri S&T. Your contributions to, go ahead. Is Dr. Pernicka in attendance today?
He's teaching.
No.
He's teaching. He's actually, he's doing work. He's actually working.
Let's give a hand.
Yeah. So his contributions to S&T and the system and to his students make this distinction well deserved. Speaking of our students, I want to recognize faculty across the system who, like Dr. Pernicka, are providing hands-on learning opportunities for the students they mentor. From Mizzou, I'd like to recognize Dr. Ron Mittler. Dr. Mittler is a professor of plant sciences within the College of Agriculture, Food and Natural Resources, Bond Life Sciences Center. His research centers on the role that reactive oxygen species play in the regulation of different biological processes. He uses plant and human cells to investigate the questions posed by his research. Dr. Mittler's research has secured $3.7 million in the form of 3 grants, including one from the National Science Foundation. Dr. Mittler's research allows him to provide support and hands-on learning opportunities to undergraduates Bernice DeRiza, Ben Shostak, and Haley Lug, as well as graduate student Ronald Myers, Jr. Haley and Bernice are both biological science majors. Ben is majoring in chemistry, and Ronald's graduate work is housed in the Plant, Insect, and Microbial Sciences program. Next, I'd like to recognize Dr. Viviana Greco, professor of Umkc's Latinx Studies program. Dr. Greco's research provides support for Victoria Dominguez, a senior. Victoria has a great interest in murals in Hague Hall and in particular the work of Spanish artist Luis Quintanilla. With Dr. Grieco's support, Victoria is exploring how UMKC's role in supporting displaced artists like Quintanilla broaden the university's academic reach. She has also spoken at length about how amazing it has been working with Dr. Grieco through this endeavor. Victoria's research will be presented at Undergraduate Research Day at the Missouri State Capitol in Jefferson City. From Missouri S&T, we have Dr. Jag Sarangapani, who is the William A. Rutledge Emerson Electric Company Distinguished Professor of Electrical Engineering Fellow of the National Academy of Inventors. Please forgive me if I've misstated the name. Okay, his research centers on robotics and secure human cyber physical systems. Currently, he is involved in research funded by the U.S. Army. This research allows him to provide support to Aaron Burke and PhD students Maxwell Geiger, Ahmed Abigroan, Irfan Ghani, and Charles Rollins. Finally, from Umso, I want to honor Dr. Bettina Kassad. Her research examines the effects of threatening environments on underrepresented groups within STEM fields. Her research is funded by the National Science Foundation and the U.S. Department of Education. Her research also provides academic support for Christina Goroski, a PhD candidate. Christina's dissertation is Do Allyship and Motivation Influence Women's Cognitive Functioning and Self-Regulation After Witnessing Sexism? These faculty-student mentorships are the bedrock of everything we do in the UM system. There are so many wonderful opportunities across our campuses, and it is my honor to continue to highlight them and the faculty and students involved. This concludes my report, and thank you. Okay, I'll turn it over to President Choi for your report.
Thank you, Chair Chapman, and thank you for sharing the stories of our incredible faculty and the work of our students who make us all very, very proud. And in continuing with the theme of student success, let me share with you the newest students at our universities that have received the most prestigious graduate fellowship in the United States, the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program. And these students are going to be pursuing their degrees at some of the best PhD programs in the country, including UMKC, S&T, and at Mizzou. And our goal as leaders of the university is to increase the opportunities for our best students to apply for these fellowships because they are that good. And we're very, very proud of them. Very recently, we also had the announcement of the graduate program ranking from U.S. News & World Report. And I must say that our universities are better than some of the rankings. There are some flaws in the rankings, but it is a measure that all universities participate in to determine the quality of the programs. And I've listed just the top 50 programs at our 4 universities. And as you can see, at Missouri S&T, many of the engineering programs are nationally competitive. And at Mizzou, education and nursing are recognized very highly. And at UMKC, there are a number of notable programs that are ranked in the top 50. Our goal is to make the rest of the country see the high quality of our programs by achieving excellence not only in the educational space, but also research and scholarship that helps to elevate our stature. In terms of undergraduate admission metrics, as you can see from here, you see the freshman applications are up at three universities with a slight downturn at UMKC. In terms of students accepted with deposits, they are all up with the exception of Missouri S&T. And I'm going to ask Chancellor Degani the reason for that dip compared to 2021.
Joy, the speaker on. You'll see if you compare our 2022 deposits with 2020 deposits, and a similar trend exists for 2019, you'll see that we are actually 11% up from 2020 and about 10% about 2019. What you see at 2021 is really what I refer to as Comer Gold Rush, where we announced the Comer Awards, and we had 1,200 applications. And when they didn't receive the Comer, we couldn't offer Comer scholarship to 1,200, 462. Then they withdrew because they had better monetary offers from other places. So 2021 was an anomaly. We've tried to fix it this year, but the trend for our deposits is up. I also like to highlight the fact that this year, for the first time, our application numbers went over 6,000 for undergraduate, and that's a significant improvement over last year.
Thank you. Thank you, Chancellor Degani. In terms of transfer applications, as you can see, all 4 universities are up, and you could see some downturns at Mizzou, but it's only 10 students, and we are still early in the process because many transfer students decide later than first-time college students to make the deposit. But we're going to have a healthy year with our transfer students. On the graduate side, there was tremendous demand for graduate education across all 4 universities. And as you can see from really UMKC, S&T, and Umso, there were double-digit increases in applications. And I think there was a pent-up demand because of the pandemic. We have many more international students applying and so forth. The key here is to look at the admits. We don't have deposits yet. We'll get deposits later once we get closer to May 1st, May 15th. So those numbers are preliminary, but we believe that we're going to have a healthy year with graduate enrollment at all 4 universities. On the research and creative works, this slide is a little hard to see, but you could see the trends. And at Mizzou and S&T on the federal R&D proposals, which is the most important leading indicator, they are up. At UMKC, it is up compared to last year. And at Missouri, at Umso, we're also seeing an increase compared to the prior year. But look at the right-hand side where you see overall the value of proposals increasing and increasing dramatically. And we need to continue this because without applying for the proposals, we're not going to get the awards and we're not going to have the expenditures. On the awards, we're also seeing sizable increases across the system. And this is a sign that our proposals are being met with great success, that the funding agencies are providing the support for our top faculty members to continue their research. On the expenditures, we have a nice continuous increase, as you can see from many of our universities, dramatic increase at UMKC on their federal expenditures, and that's going to continue at all 4 universities. This is, as you can see, all of these slides are from the beginning of the fiscal year until March 31st. The final year numbers will come on June 30th, and we are actively encouraging faculty members to submit high-quality proposals, but also at the same time providing them with the support that they need to achieve success. I also put here total R&D expenditures, which includes support not only from federal, but state, industry, foundations, and other sources. And the trend is going in the positive direction. We're very pleased with that. I want to also recognize faculty members that have received either highly prestigious or prestigious awards as defined by very important organizations like the National Academies. And as you can see from here, we have so much to be proud of. Our faculty members are working diligently to pursue excellence in their fields. And also, as you saw from Chair Chapman's presentation, they take their teaching and mentoring very, very seriously. And we're very proud of them. Some highlights on major research. This is from Missouri S&T, from Professor Leslie Gersh, and she is developing very important projects to extract minerals and other resources so that the moon can be used as a base for further interstellar exploration. And this is a project from NASA with many of our colleagues participating. Next up is a grant from Missouri, University of Missouri, from Dr. Xinghua Ding. And he is a world expert when it comes to this field of precision and personalized health. And this $2.3 million grant from NIH is going to be used to better understand neurodegenerative diseases. And we are one of the key focus areas because of our investments in next-gen precision health. At Umkc, Dr. Michael Abel is an expert in educational research, and he has developed a very important program to help develop the type of training that we need so that we can better educate our young children. And especially with the pandemic and other challenges that many of them face, we need to ensure that we have the proper training so that the teachers are able to educate the next generation of leaders for Missouri. Last but not least is a major grant for Umso, and this is a project that's sponsored by Missouri Foundation for Health that enables faculty members, Dr. Katie Ellison and Elizabeth Sale, to be able to work with those that provide care at home. And this ability to have aging in place and providing the resources is a very important field that all of us eventually are gonna rely upon. And this is where Umso's strength, where that community-based research is really highlighted so very well. And we're very proud of the work of these two faculty. Next slide. Whenever I show this slide, Missouri S&T's performance in 2021 just destroys the scale. So, but as you can see from here, there's some work to do. We went through a pandemic where many donors were not comfortable seeing our advancement officers and administrators, but now that we are back to more normal than before during the pandemic, we need to have an active approach to increase the support for our universities. So Chair Chapman, that concludes my presentation, and I'd like to ask if there are any questions or comments.
Thank you, Dr. Troy. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, thank you. Remington or Curator, Curator Williams? I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Remington. Student representative.
I'll let Curator Williams take it if he wants.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, Kansas City.
There you go.
There we go, Kansas City. But no, thank you, Chair Chapman, and thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about what our students have been doing the last several months. So next slide, please. So at Umso on the left there, there's three students, Shonda Martin, Hafsa Zakidi, and Zachary Weiss. And they've spent this semester working at Decipher, a St. Louis-based data company that looks at lawyers and their job moves and making sure that there's no conflict of interest and things of that nature. And the CFO of that company is actually an Umso grad herself. And she said based on the caliber of those three Umso students and other Umso students that they've had working there, that they're going to look for more unique ways and grounded ways to continue the collaboration between Umso and all four system university students, faculty, and administrators, and how they continue to grow in the St. Louis region. So the two students that are actually graduating this spring have already been offered data analyst positions at Decipher, so we're looking forward to seeing what they're able to do there. And then on the right is Kevin Humble. And right out of high school, Kevin was accepted into an apprenticeship and became an electrician for about 10 to 15 years. And during the start of the pandemic, he was a little uncomfortable with the ebbs and flows of the construction and electrician industry. So he decided to go back to school. And actually, he's already lined up a job for Boeing after he graduates, and he's plans to graduate through a dual degree program between Umso and WashU in St. Louis with his degree in electrical engineering, and hit the ground running at Boeing. So we're looking forward to see all the fruits of that labor. Next slide, please. Masters isn't the only springtime green tradition. We also have St. Pat's here in Rolla, which is which is obviously a big hit. And I was talking to Chancellor Degani earlier, and he said there's a lot of pent-up excitement and a great event this year after it was able to be back in person and full scale this year. So Grace Christian, from a student from Jefferson City, Missouri, was crowned queen, and there's the picture of the whole court there. So another great event and something that I encourage everyone to try to get back to at least once. And then around the nation, and especially Missouri, everyone's witnessing a teacher shortage. So this has presented a unique opportunity where oftentimes student teachers are the sole instructor in the classroom, and that's exactly what's happened to Sarah Darknell. So she actually came to S&T thinking she was going to be pre-med and go that route, but ended up getting here and decided she wanted to enter the workforce a little quicker. So she's from St. James, Missouri, and has the opportunity this semester. She's been teaching ecology as a sole instructor in Bourbon High School in Bourbon, Missouri, and plans to work there after graduation. So just a great example about how our students are meeting the need of our state and the teacher shortage that we face hands-on while they're still learning at our institution. Next slide, please. Caring for Colombia is a great event that has been going on for years, and it's been able to be revamped this year after a 2-year hiatus. So over 300 students were able to go to 7 nonprofits and state parks around Colombia in mid-Missouri and spend a day working on what they call minor projects, but throughout the course of the years of working on those projects have created a major impact for our region. And then on the left there is Jamaica Jacobs, who is a senior at Mizzou, who's currently applying to 5 graduate programs for neuroscience. And she's been pushed to that path due to her upbringing with her mother, who before she was born, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So ever since Jamaica was made aware of that when she turned 8 years old, she's had this path set, and it's been great to see how CASE, the Center for Academic Success and Excellence at Mizzou, has been able to help her further that goal and further that dreams, and hopefully here in the next few weeks get good news about a graduate school placement. Next slide, please. And then finally, at UMKC, a lot of great stuff happening and going on. 10 UMKC students participated in an undergraduate research day at the Capitol. So there you see President Choi and Michael Jakoyne, Mizzou senior, who did his research on hair regeneration in zebrafish and how they're able to use it to detect things in the water. So 10 UMKC students there were able to join other students from across the system in the Capitol, again in person this year, to present the great research that our institutions are doing. And finally, there on the right is a picture from UMKC School of Medicine Match Day, which for the first time this year was moved to Sweeney Rec on campus. That way, all friends and family were able to join and join in the festivities. And it was a really exciting day for everyone, and students were placed in over 25 states. But what's really important and important for Missouri is 39 of our students are completing their residencies in the state of Missouri, and 22 are staying in the Kansas City region area. So it's great to see how our medical school in Kansas City, as well as our medical school in Colombia, are really impacting our state, but also the regions that they serve. So last slide. With that, I'll take any questions, and thank you for your time.
Any questions for Student Representative Williams?
Great job.
Great job. In Remington, you're graduating from law school next
Yes, sir.
Correct. Well, congratulations. We're very proud of you.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Remington. Our next item of business is to approve the new Board Executive Committee and Standing Committee appointments for the year, as shown in the materials. May I have a motion and a second from the board to approve these appointments as presented in those materials?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Do we have any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, our next item is to approve the revised 2022 Board of Curators meeting calendar. The one recommended change is to move the September 8th meeting to Wednesday, September 7th. This meeting will still be held at UMKC. May I have a motion and a second from the board to approve the revised 2022 Board of Curators meeting calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, we have one other calendar recommendation today, and that is to approve the 2023 Board of Curators meeting calendar as presented in your materials. May I have a motion and a second from the board to approve the 2023 meeting calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, next we have the consent agenda. Are there any questions from the board regarding the consent agenda items as shown in your materials? Hearing none, may I have a motion and a second from the board to approve the consent agenda as presented in your materials?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, Curator Holbrook, I now turn it over to you for the Finance Committee meeting.
Good afternoon. Or good morning, I guess. We have, Finance Committee has one information item and two action items today. I'd ask Executive Vice President Ryan Rapp to provide the update on fiscal year 2023 budget and planning.
Thank you, Curator Holbrook. I will briefly go over just an update as we're working towards our budget planning for FY23. I want to remind the board that in February, we approved the financial plans, the 5-year financial plans, which really then inform how we're budgeting, and we will bring the budget forward to the board for approval at the June meeting. Just want to also think about, as we think about financial performance and why it matters, it really does matter because it's what supports the mission of the university. And we did approve setting targets as part of the February meeting. If we go then to the next chart, I'm just highlighting, which was in your materials, the targets that were set in February, and each university is working towards bringing forward an operating budget that would be within an acceptable range of those performance targets, as those are over a 5-year period. So we then think about some of the things of what's driving the budget, and we'll talk about revenue, and then we'll talk about cost. I think when you look at this chart, what we're trying to show is we have, 3 large drivers of revenue, one being clearly patient medical service at 42% of our overall revenue. When we combine state support and net tuition, it represents 27%, and the third being our auxiliary enterprises. Now, that being said, as we think about how much will healthcare continue to grow, our current financial plan projected it to grow at a rate of 6% over the next 5 years. But we wouldn't expect to see this percentage grow exponentially. I think with what we were projecting as other growth, we would expect that to hold within that 40 to 50% range over the next 5 years. The other thing I'd highlight is as we think about our auxiliary enterprises, what do those represent? That's a number of things. It's a pretty broad term, but our large ones would be housing, dining, athletics, our bookstore, things like that as you think about it. When we then look at some of these other sources like investment income, private giving, grants and contracts, they're very important to the university, but they are typically restricted to a very specific purpose. So sometimes when you think about us compared to private universities, they have large endowments, and those are largely unrestricted endowments that go to support their general operations. Most of our endowments are to support either scholarship or professorships. And that's typical for that. We're not unusual in that sense as we compare to public university.
Can I ask a question on that? When I was
Sure.
reading through the materials, I was reading the definition of private gifts, and it sets aside the endowments. If I understood, what would be a target when you look at universities like ours? Somewhere I saw 10%, then I see this 2%. When we think system-wide, what should the percentage of philanthropy be towards our revenue?
Well, I think our goal would be to continue to grow that.
But what's realistic?
what's realistic.
I know it'll be different for each system institution, but as a whole.
Yeah, so I think you'd probably combine your spendable investment income, which that's giving, but that's coming off the endowments. I think our goal would probably to say to combine those two if we could get to 10%.
Okay. So I saw that later in the material.
Yep.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Ryan, would it be possible down the road to break out the net tuition and fees and state appropriations?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about, it's not quite, about 40-60, I think. 40% being from the state and 60% being from students, but we can break that out.
Thank you.
Then as we just kind of shift and think about what our revenue profile looks like to what our expense profile looks like, I think one of the things I do want to highlight is we really have had an effort underway to transform our staff and our workforce, really with President Choi and the board at the time talking about how do we approach administrative review and administrative efficiencies. Some of it has been in response to budget challenges, but I also think we've been very intentional in changing the way work is done. So through increasing shared services, leveraging technology, and then just overall administrative streamlining, it's going to be important. I'm not saying we're done. It's very important that we continue this work, but you can look at it and go, well, we're down 1,000, 1,100 staff positions. I think it's more important to actually focus in where we've seen those changes. So, we are seeing significant reductions in office and admin support, some of our maintenance type work, and some of our service. And then where we're actually investing is in our healthcare practitioners and its IT, those areas. So I think that's consistent with the plans we've put out, and we plan to continue to do that. As we think about what we're contemplating for next year, for salaries and wages, each campus is planning on anywhere from 4 to 5% growth in salary and wages. And that would be to support high performers, address market issues. But I do want to be clear, we are not proposing and won't be proposing in June any type of across-the-board increases for faculty and staff. But we will have a pool to address salary issues, but nothing would be an across-the-board increase. As we then look forward, and I had some of this in the material, and we're going to discuss some of this in May as we talk about tuition for next year and then moving to differential tuition for the following year along with plateau tuition from Missouri S&T and MU. We know that we're going to be in a very competitive environment for students. I think in 2026, our high school graduates begin to drop. That's where I don't think we'll see large enrollment growth, but I think we have very much an opportunity to continue to maintain the size of enrollment we currently have. I'd also like to acknowledge the state support and the public policy changes that have been made by the legislature and the governor over the past 2 years really have reinforced the state's commitment to the university. To me, it's further reinforced by what we're seeing. The governor's recommending a 5.4% increase in our recurring appropriation that has passed the House and their budget process, and I think it just came out of the Senate yesterday as well. So we continue to see support. Probably the headwind on that as we think about it is inflationary pressures, and we'll talk a little bit about that on this next chart. I wrote this, and at the time I wrote, it will become a key pressure. I probably, if I could change that today, I said it has become. Inflation is a key pressure that we're facing in this budget cycle. I think we all know that CPI was 7% at the end of the year. I think the most recent was 8%. The key for us as we think about this will be continuing to grow revenue and our price increases to try to keep pace with inflation, but then also making sure that we continue to find cost efficiency. So I think I've said this many times, but it's not one or the other. We actually have to be able to deliver both. And that's, I've shown this a lot, but it really is the platform in which we think about what we need to do to make sure we're delivering the financial performance to deliver on the mission of the university. We are going to be in a different operating environment as we move forward than we have been for the last 5 to 10 years, last decade. I think the next 5 years will look very different, but I think we do have an opportunity really where we can build upon our success, really ensuring that each of our universities support the research and economic development needs of the state along with the workforce needs of the state. We will have to be focused on additional investment through the budget process that really does kind of support that idea of not only making those investments, but finding things that generate revenue through us. And so some of that, I think, has to be as we focus on student success, how do we increase graduation rates, time to completion, and increase placement outcomes? And when we think about research, as the President's noted, trying to grow that faster than our peers, enhancing our rankings compared to other national public research universities. And then how do we do that? I think it's holding ourselves, our faculty and staff, to high standards, but also understanding we're going to have to reward those faculty and staff for delivering on those high standards. Pricing our tuition to reflect the quality improvements, but is also reflective of the demand for the degrees. Then continuing to push for public policy in Missouri higher education that rewards quality and outcomes. I think those will be the key things that we'll have to do to continue to move forward to execute on this plan. As far as next steps, I'm highlighting what we're doing here today. In April and May, we will be discussing tuition and fees for FY23 and FY24. Typically, it would just be for one fiscal year. With the change to differential and plateau tuition, we want to go ahead and discuss what we're planning to do, as that will be a significant change in May. And then June, we would bring the operating budget forward to the board for approval for FY23, along with our appropriation request of the state for FY24. I'm happy to take any questions the board might have.
Are there any questions from the Finance Committee and/or the board for Vice President Rapp? I have a couple. Ryan, if we go back to slide 19, where you had the financial performance targets we outlined. Yes. I'm interested in what your projection is for the year on hitting these targets, primarily under operating margins, and then your spendable cash to debt, where you see the projection
For the current year?
for the current year. Are we going to hit these projections? Are we going to fall short of these projections, or what's your anticipation?
So we just closed March. We will share our quarterly financial report with the board. As of when we did our last quarter projection on a consolidated basis, I'm comfortable that we will hit those projections.
Even given the difficulties in healthcare that I think
I think healthcare is not performing quite at target,
Right.
but we've had some increased performance at our universities, and then frankly, on a consolidated basis, our health plan is performing better than would have expected, so I think that will offset that.
Okay. And then as a follow-up to that, on the expense side, are expenses hitting the 7% we're hearing about nationwide on inflation? Are they going up that much, or are we falling short of that? Or
So we're not at 7% yet. I think some of that I attribute to, I think as inflation creeps in, it tends to creep in from the coasts.
Okay.
I think we will be filling that fully, though, when we're in FY23.
Okay. Then my final question is on the employment side. Within our industry and what I read, the employment side relative to wages going up, people changing jobs at a very, very rapid rate, jumping from fields, just moving around because of better opportunity and the competitive in the market. I don't think that's affecting your professors, but I would think it's going to affect your staff in trying to compete with the private industry to attract those people to either stay with you or attract them into the university.
I think I'll focus on the staff, and if the president or others have something to add on the faculty, they could. I think that's I'll comment on the faculty that that's absolutely a very competitive environment for us. On the staff side, we are seeing increased competition. I think when we look at the information we have, where we're seeing it is primarily in kind of those mid-career professional type roles relative to the turnover we see that's where we see that the most. So what I'm talking about is kind of mid-career professionals that are in that $60,000 to $100,000 range. We're seeing a lot of competition for that, and I think a large part of that is, I think it's still to settle out, and I'm not here to. They think they have the opportunity to work from home, remote work, so we just have more competition. That being said, I know when we talk to our colleagues in the corporate sector, I don't think anyone has figured out what's actually going to work post-pandemic in terms of remote work versus in-person work. I don't think that's worked itself out, but we're certainly feeling that pressure right now.
I won't ask your opinion of remote work and the amount of it and the productivity of that. You and I had that conversation privately more than once, but I think just in general that there'll be a shift back.
I think there'll be some leveling out. I think flexible work is probably going to become more important over time, and I think everyone's still trying to figure that out, us included. And I want to be clear, that's not something that I think is unique to higher education. I think that is impacting every part of the workforce in this country right now.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I might just add something. I agree with Ryan that we are seeing in that area that it's areas that we need to focus, but the University of Missouri is a great place to work and people know it. And that we are seeing interest in our jobs, and so that's exciting. And we'll continue to have programs to support the recruitment and retention of folks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Ryan. We have two action items. Our first action item is the defined benefit plan for financial management strategy. We are being asked to approve changes to the plan's asset allocation targets, adopt a new financial management policy for the plan, accept changes to the plan's actuarial assumptions recommended by Siegel's report of actuarial valuation assumption study. Each of these changes was presented and discussed at the March 25th, 2022 joint meeting of the Finance and Governance, Compensation, and Human Resources Committee. I'd ask Ryan Rapp and Tom Richards to please provide us with a short overview before we go forward.
Thank you, Curator Holbrook. As you noted, this is just a review of the information that was discussed in March, so we have it in a summary format. I'll close with it, but also as we start, I do want to thank our retirees, our Retiree Association, our faculty and staff for their robust and thoughtful engagement on this topic. They do remain critical members of the university community, and Tom, myself, and others look forward to continuing to engage with them on this topic. If we think about just an overview, I want to be very clear. The university's pension plan or defined benefit plan has always been well managed with great care. It remains very well funded relative to other public pension plans. The actions that we're proposing today will only strengthen that. They also do not, I want to be very clear, these changes do not affect payments to current or future retirees. Really what we're talking today about is what is our investment strategy as we move forward? What are the pension plan assumptions? And then what is a financial management policy that we should put around the pension as we move forward? So with that, I'll let Tom go over the proposed changes to the investment mix, and then I'll talk about the actuarial assumptions and policy.
Can I just jump in quickly and say I really appreciate how hard you're working to look forward, be forward thinking about the safety and security of our pension plan. So thank you for doing that, engaging the different stakeholders.
Thank you.
So at a very high level with the investment portfolio that's been proposed, we were challenged to look at the portfolio and look for ways to try to increase the return as much as we could, given the amount of risk that we thought was prudent to take. So the current portfolio that we have today that the policy we're operating under has a projected forward return of 6.6%. And the mix that we've proposed and worked through the investment committee, the finance committee, et cetera, would take that number from 6.6 up to 7.0. Now, how did we do that? The table in the lower left-hand part of this page just walks through the highlights. We're shifting 1% of the portfolio from public equity to private equity, keeping the equity exposure about the same. The real change that's driving the return increase is coming through the reallocation of capital from treasuries and tips and moving primarily into real estate. Now, where will we target in real estate? We talked about this at the Finance Committee. The main focus in terms of that increased investment is in multifamily housing, which remains in short supply throughout the United States, is further bolstered, frankly, by rising mortgage rates, which is helpful for that area, and then also industrial and supply chain. So think of everything that's driving the economy, to e-commerce, to delivery overnight, eventually onshoring from overseas. All of those things require warehousing and supply chain and logistics real estate, which is in extraordinarily short demand in this country. So both of those areas we feel have strong opportunities for investment where capital is needed now, and both of those are fairly recession-proof. So even with the changes that we're proposing, which will take the return from 6.6 to 7, that still falls short of what the current return assumption is on the pension plan of 7.2. So as part of the overall changes, we would also be recommending that return expectation for the plan be lowered from 7.2 to 7.0. And happy to answer any questions on that.
Any questions? Thank you, Tom.
So then, just as far as the actuarial study, which is in the materials, we perform it every 5 years. We call it a quinquennium study. I think the thing I would highlight is the question that we asked ourselves, and I think the board should consider, are the actuarial assumptions right, but are they reasonable? And so the last point I'm making is the costs that we'll have to pay out relative to the pension aren't really determined by what we think might happen. It's what we actually experience. So the actual investment returns we earn, the actual longevity of the members of our pension plan, that's really what drives the cost. But we're trying to say, do we think they're reasonable and we have a reasonable chance of being in a range of meeting those obligations with those assumptions? And I think we do. As we then think about how do we put this into action and we think about a policy, I think I fully recognize the concerns that have been raised, but given the size of the plan and our need really I want to be very transparent with our current employees and our retirees, we think it actually is important that we state this as a matter of policy and that additional benefits in the form of an ad hoc COLA would not be provided. If a future board and administration wants to revisit this, they could, but I think it would be important that they revisit it at the policy level to make those changes. And that gets back to our primary objective is to make sure we can underwrite the mission of the university and deliver on the guaranteed benefits of the pension plan. But I will go back to the point I made earlier. We do look forward to working with the active members and our employees to educate them on what their retirement options are and continuing to do so, and also continuing to engage with the retirees on the topics that are important to them, and working with them on how we can best support them. But I'm happy to take any questions you might have relative to the policy that's being proposed that really sets in policy the things we've been discussing about how we want to manage the plan from an investment perspective, but also from a contribution perspective on the university side.
Thank you, Ryan. I'd have a comment to make at this point. I know that Chairman Chapman has read every one of the emails that was sent. I know that I have read every one of the emails that was sent. I'd further like to add that I've read all the resolutions that we've gotten from the faculty, senates, and all the retirement associations, and appreciate their concern. But I'd also like to clarify a point and help me here. On top of our normal pension plan payments for our current employees, we are currently paying just slightly under $80 million additional a year to fund the unfunded liability we have. Is that
that's
relatively close?
Yeah.
And the point I want to make is that's a direct impact on the operation of the whole university of $80 million. And we're taking it out of today's tuition, today's resources, today's state funding, today's operations, to ensure that the retirement obligations are met to those that have already retired. And if I understand the analysis that's been presented to me, that this is being paid down on a 30-year, it was a 30-year, basically 30-year mortgage payment.
30-year closed amortization.
And we are in year 7 or 8 of that?
Well, yeah, I think we're at 22. We've got 22 more years.
We have 22, the point is we have 22 more years of this. Now, I have pressed both Ryan and Tom on that. They both are relatively confident that it will pay out sooner than 22 years. Oh, you're backing up on me now.
No, well, I can't predict the future. I think this plan gives us a reasonable chance of doing so while also protecting the university's operating budget. Because what we are saying is if we don't realize the returns we're expecting, we have a stabilization reserve.
Correct.
And we will utilize that stabilization reserve over the next 5 years to ensure the cost to the university and what it has to contribute to the pension plan do not go up. Now, if we experience a very severe economic event, we would have to revisit that after 5 years. But I feel confident that we can do that. And the other thing I'd highlight that I didn't touch on is why we're bringing this forward is now that we're in a closed plan, that presents a different set of risks. So it's not a plan that I mean, it has a long run out on it, but it is a closed plan. And very quickly, we will be in an environment where we really don't have very many active members in the plan, and the majority of our employees will be in the DC plan. So I think that's the other reason for us being more conservative in the approach.
So the point I'm trying to make is that from just an operational standpoint of view, the plan will not be in a condition sometime in the next 23 years, 22 years to offer a COLA, because we're going to be underfunded, and that would just take more money out of the operations of the university to fund those increases.
Yeah, I think unless investments perform wildly well. And I think, though, as we've discussed, we had a really great year, but then we always think about mean reversion. The 30% return roughly that we saw last year isn't something we would expect would be replicated in the next 5.
And I'm assuming if it's like the rest of the market, our returns so far this year are probably not meeting our expectations at this point.
He's at 3. We're at 3 to 4% right now, and so depending on how the last quarter ends up.
Right. Okay. So anyway, I wanted to get some of the background out on with everybody here, and you and I and Tom have had lengthy discussions over this issue.
Yeah, I think this has been something. And that's why I open with, I think we've always thoughtfully managed this. This is something really over the last decade we've been working towards. And I think with what the board is contemplating today, we're continuing to manage it appropriately. Our plan, I do think, has always been well managed. Some of the features that were added to our plans in the 90s and 2000s were far less costly than what other pension plans were adding, public pension plans were adding at the time. And so I think this is just really continuing that sound financial management of our pension plan. And it is, again, it's our largest liability, and so I think it is something that the board absolutely should be very focused on.
I'm sorry for dominating. Does anybody else have any questions for?
Yeah, I'd like to say that I think part of the confusion or part of the misconceptions is that when you state that our plan is basically well-funded relative to others. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is well-funded relative to some states and other private plans, mm-hmm. But it's still, to his point, we're kicking in $80 million a year out of our operating funds to make that thing even Steven. right? I mean,
Yeah.
to support it. So even though it's relatively done, well-funded, it costs us $80 million a year out of our operating. And that's a point that needs to be made, I think, a little stronger, because when we say it's well-funded relatively, well,
It's still a significant cost.
it's relatively to $80 million.
Yes, that is correct. The one other thing I wanted to touch on, because we only briefly touched on it at the last meeting, is we are looking at, and this is again to try to reduce the overall liability, reduce volatility and risk in the plan as we move forward, looking at buyouts for vested terminations. So I'm not talking about a buyout for current members, current employees. This would be individuals who have left the university, no longer work here, but aren't in retirement status. So we are planning on how to do that. We will be reporting back to the board on how that progresses. But I want to just be clear with anyone that's listening, if you are a current employee with the university, that is not what we're looking at. This is something, though, you can see it's about $366 million of the overall liability that we're targeting. With that, I just say, our recommended actions are related to approving the new asset allocation that Tom went over, the new financial management policy for the retirement plan, and then accepting the changes to the actuarial 5-year study that was presented by Siegel.
Any other questions for Tom or for Ryan? If there's no further discussion, I have a motion from the committee and a second from the committee to approve the defined benefit financial management strategy for the University of Missouri as outlined in your materials.
Mr. Chair, I have to recuse myself on the S allocation vote.
So I make the motion. Or, I'm sorry, what did you need me to do?
I move is fine.
Okay, I move, because I don't know that there's anybody else here who can vote, so I don't know what to do. There's only the two of us.
We lack a second unless you can.
See, that was my question.
I can make if I'm allowed to make the second, I will make the second.
Mark?
Okay, then I will make the second. Thank you. Okay, the motion has, let me ask another procedural question here. Todd is not here. Is he on the line?
He should be here shortly, but
He's not online.
he should be driving in shortly.
Okay. If,
Go ahead, Mark.
do you want to pass on this at this time? Come back? Yeah.
So wait for time, okay. See, that's,
Parliamentarian tells me that we should wait on that issue. We'll come back to this one, okay?
Okay.
So we have another action item today. And that is the 5-year capital plan for MU Healthcare, Missouri S&T, Umkc, and Umso. Ryan Rapp will present the action items related to the 5-year capital plan for MU Healthcare, Missouri S&T, Umkc, UMSL. The project outlines the materials meet the university system's missions and values and are recommended for approval. Ryan.
Thank you, Curator Holbrook. The capital plans, they include our state appropriation request, but we will bring back that actual request at the June meeting. It includes any of the 50/50 requests of the state, any new construction projects greater than $5 million, renovation or infrastructure projects greater than $8 million, and anything that would have debt regardless of size. One of the things we did a couple of years ago was we actually said, okay, what is included in your financial plan? So when you see the part that says it's in the financial plan, we put it in the 5-year financial plan, and then we have strategic development project plans. And those are really aspirational projects. We are making progress on capital planning, but getting that integrated with our strategic planning and financial planning is definitely an area that we need to continue to improve upon. So I'll just get right to it. Anything I've highlighted in bold is something that was added to the plan since you saw it this fall. It is, but for MU overall, it's consistent with the plans that were approved in September, with the exception of Lotus Health Sciences Library Building Project. This is really a project related to MU Healthcare, and it's part of the facilities consolidation into one location, and the Department of Child Health will be relocated from Women's and Children's to Lotus Hall. Then if we go to what their aspirational strategic projects are. The only new project for this was the National Swine Resource and Research Center addition. And if this did come to fruition, it would be funded through an NIH grant. It would double our animal housing capacity and expand the swine lines that we currently have in place. For MU Healthcare, there is no changes from what was presented this fall. They do have this, and it's, I think, in the 5th year of the plan, would be the need for some type of medical office building or ambulatory project of $66 million. For Umkc, the new health sciences building, while I have it shown as new, it's not a new concept. It's been on their capital plan for many years. It was originally a $150 million project, but as we've worked on the state request, it has been increased, or actually it was reduced to a much smaller project, and that was for critical needs within the School of Medicine and School of Dentistry. With the ARPA funding that the state is being able to provide, it's now being proposed as a new $100 million facility, and with $50 million of the funds coming from the state. The St. Joseph facility, I'd highlight, it's new. This would be funded from a federal grant that we would receive, I believe, from the NIH. The steam heating plant renewal project is not new, but it was moved from the strategic aspirational project list into their financial plan. As far as the aspirational projects that are listed here, these remain unchanged from what was presented in the fall, with the exception of moving the steam plant project to the actual financial plan. For S&T, I think we're familiar with this. It's consistent with what you saw in the master plan in this fall. There's been nothing added that was included in the finance plan. The one item that was added is the Innovation Campus Program expansion. This is a project that's budgeted at $95 million, and they're seeking federal funding to support that, and would tie in, I think, with the Protoplex project that is underway. For Umso, you see some of these projects, and I think they may look new, but this was really in working with Chancellor Soblik and her team to further break out the consolidation, the Umso space consolidation project they've had in place on their campus, and further defining what individual projects might look like for that. And so you see we've added the Thomas Jefferson Library consolidation along with the Welcome Center, which would be, I think, for the Welcome Center, most of that would come from a gift. And then the only aspirational project that was added is the Stadler Hall renovation. And I think some of these aspirational projects that you're seeing across all 4 universities have been added in just wanting to be prepared should the state want to provide funding next year for maintenance and repair projects. So we want to make sure we have those projects ready to go as we get into next year's budget season. But I'm happy to answer any questions members of the board may have in regards to the capital plans.
Are there any questions for Vice President Rapp? I want to thank you. You prepared for me at my request over the last 5 years. I think it was 5 or 6 years. You look back as to how these projects moved. I had been critical that stuff would show up and leave, and what you showed me was that my memory's not as good as I thought it was. So thank you for doing that. Did you share that with the entire board?
No, but I'd be
Would you please do that? They may
Yes.
find it interesting. What it's going to do is take each one of those projects and show you how it moved during the last 5 or 6 years. So I found that very, very helpful to understand.
We still have work to do, though.
Yes, sir.
We are getting better, and I think the financial planning process with the capital planning process, and strategic planning process is improving that.
It is.
But we're not done.
Thank you. Any other questions? No further. Mr. Chairman, would you like me to adjourn or the Finance Committee and come back later when, well, we can take care of this matter, because I don't think Chairman Curator Lehman will be abstaining at this time.
Just on the asset allocation vote, that's the only one.
Okay.
How would you like to proceed, Mr.
Yeah, and then you can proceed with the vote.
Okay, we'll proceed with this action item. We'll come back to the other later. No further discussion. May I have a motion and a second from the committee to approve the 5-year capital plan for MU Healthcare, Missouri S&T, Umkc, St. Louis, as outlined in the materials for this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, we move to recommend to the full board that the 5-year capital plan for MU Healthcare, Missouri S&T, Umkc, Umso, as outlined in the materials for this meeting, be approved.
Thank you, Curator Holbrook. Do I have a second on that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, if none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, all those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, back to you, Curator Holbrook.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes, well, it doesn't conclude. Do we adjourn, do we recess this meeting to come back? Mr. Chairman, we will recess, and at your convenience during the meeting, we'd like to come back when Curator Graves is in attendance.
Okay, Curator Graves is expected to be here around 10:15, so when he arrives, we will reconvene and take care of the action item. Okay, Curator Williams, I now turn it over to you for the Governance, Compensation, and Human Resources Committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. The Governance, Compensation, and Human Resources Committee has one information item. The University of Missouri System Annual Benefits Report was provided in the board materials for you to review. Vice President Marcia Fisher, who is saving us time by already being up there, will highlight some areas of the report and be available for questions. Marcia?
Thank you. Before I jump in, I'd like to also introduce one of my colleagues that's with me here today, Jessica Baker, Assistant Vice President and an important leader in the benefit, retirement, and compensation area, and wanted to acknowledge her and her work in this area. So much of the written report has lots of details in it. I'd like to spend just a few minutes highlighting some things, and then as Curator Williams said, I'll be available for questions. The University of Missouri offers a variety of market competitive benefits, including health plans that employees can choose from, and retirement benefits depending on their hire date. Just to highlight a few things, so the total medical spend 5-year average for the University of Missouri is 1%. The national trend is 7%. So that lower average trend is through multiple approaches. The custom network plan that I'll discuss a little bit, RFP savings, cost management programs, and 2021 design changes. There was a reduction, both for us and the national average, related to COVID. In the peak COVID period, there was a lower utilization of health benefits. The 2021 medical plan design changes was about a $17 million cost reduction, and that was made up of a few different strategies. There were design changes, and that's in Appendix A if you want to see the details. But there were some increased in co-payments, deductibles, out-of-pockets, and we were making adjustments that others in the market were also making. The things with the design changes are it shifts to those that are utilizing the medical plan, and it also incentivizes certain behavior. And I like to give an example that's actually from a few years ago, but it explains it well. There was a time that we were seeing increased use of emergency room visits, which is a costly point of getting care. And we noticed that our deductible was lower than what you would expect. So we rose the deductible, and we saw that improve. And just if you think about it, if you have allergies or a sore throat, really your primary care physician or urgent care is a better source than the emergency room. So we help incentivizing getting that right point of care for our employees while also being cost effective. We also implemented vendor programs to reduce cost, and I'll highlight some of those for you on page 9. We did eliminate the wellness incentive. We're still very interested in wellness programs and encouraging it for our employees, but we found that the incentive wasn't actually able to be connected to lowering the benefit cost. So through the RFP process, we do have an on-site wellness coordinator provided by United Healthcare, and we're working on some programs to support our employees. The custom network plan is something that we're very pleased with. It's where the plan and the hospital share in savings realized through managed cost. So we work to set cost targets, we work to establish care management and performance metrics, and it's really what I call a win-win. It's getting the right care for our employees and at the same time saving costs. RFPs are another strategies that we've realized good cost savings, and we go to the market and it ensures cost and market competitiveness. I'll just highlight 3 examples for you. So for the active employees, when we did the RFP, we ended up with United Healthcare with an approximate $2 million savings in some of the administrative services. When we went to an RFP for long-term disability, not only did we realize a cost savings, but we were able to add in outsourcing FMLA. And so that was an important way to centralize that work in a more efficient way and still have cost savings. And then with the Medicare Advantage, by integrating medical and Part D, that's going to result in about a $3.5 million savings. And that's significant, especially because the total cost in 2021 was 5.9, and it's anticipated in 2022 it'll be 2.4. I wanted to highlight something that I just find interesting. Part of what we do in this annual benefit report is look for trends. And virtual visits, it's something we had prior to COVID, but people weren't as interested in it. We saw a big surge, obviously, in 2020, but we're seeing that it's continuing in 2021. Why is this important? It better meets the needs for some of our employees and their convenience, and if it meets what they need, it's a significant cost savings for both us and the employee. It costs nearly half for an in-person visit. I want to highlight for you Appendix C, and this is a lot in Appendix C. This is our 3-year roadmap for the health plan, the retirement plan, and other programs. And what you'll see when you look in this is just that we're continually working to measure against benchmarks, look for ways that we can be more effective, look for ways that we can be more efficient, that we want to deliver good benefits and do it in a way that's prudent. I'll highlight 2 things for you in Appendix C. One is the leave project that you're aware that will come to you in June with much more details. We've come to the board a couple of different times at least, talking about the general design principles of moving to a PTO, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you in June further details on that. Also highlight for you compensation, another important, obviously very important part of our overall total rewards, that we're looking at a market review of benchmark jobs and a refresh of our structure. Last several years, there was really a relatively flat labor market, but we're seeing that change, and much like other employers, we're looking at that and looking at it closely. And finally, before I ask if you have questions, I want to end by acknowledging a really important group to us, and that's the Total Rewards Advisory Committee, or we refer to it as TRAC. And that is made up of faculty, staff, and retirees. And the reason I'd like to highlight it for you, we really ask them to give of their time and do some of this challenging work with us. And they will tackle the toughest projects, they'll ask the toughest questions, and what I really appreciate that we're able to have those engaged discussions, and they're seen as people on their campus that they can go to get information. And oftentimes when an issue comes up, someone will say to me, well, I just call my TRAC member, and they explain to me how it happened and what happened. So if any of them are listening, I would like to say thank you. It is a very effective group, and we appreciate the time that they put into it. And I think Curator Holloway has a question. I could tell when you test the mic.
Well, let me ask, are there any questions for Marcy?
As Greg always says, we've had discussions concerning this. And I just wanted to, we're looking for a little deeper background on the compensation, the actual paychecks that our employees and staffs are receiving across the board.
Sure.
And we look forward to getting some more information on that, really as the curators as a whole group more fully understand the total package that we have with our employees. You know, the leave is part of it, the medical benefits part of it, but you know, what they see biweekly or once a month is that paycheck.
Yep, and we do have a comprehensive compensation philosophy that takes a number of things into consideration. And we have what you call the global grading system, and we benchmark against jobs and do that on a periodic basis. And I'd be happy to either have personal conversations or come back to the board as a whole and explain that further.
Yeah, we just want to have a little deeper dive into that
Yep.
for a better understanding of the whole package.
I think that's
Great.
important. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a couple. I would appreciate if we could incorporate in your chart one that was in our materials on your breakout of your benefits, paid time off into that. We all agree paid time off is a benefit, or are we still not agreeing that it's a benefit?
I agree paid time off is an important benefit to our
Okay.
employees.
Right. So when we talk about the benefit package, I think, and down below, I think that should be in that discussion on that pie you've given us on what we're paying for. And then secondly, as you well know, and I'm, point I want to make, I'd ask Vice President Rapp to prepare for me what it costs to put a $20 an hour person on the payroll. I was somewhat curious with the whole benefits package, and the number he came up to me was $33.83 is what it costs the university for a $20 an hour employee, which is roughly, Ryan and I calculated the number this morning, it's 69%, not 70. So that lug, I call it the lug, and in our world we call it the lug, is pretty high. And I think long-term, that's going to be very difficult to sustain. And I'm part of my goals is to push that lug down. So I think that's something we have to look at in totality, and I understand your hands are tied to somewhat because of the payments we have to make for the unfunded portion of the liability, which I'm assuming, I don't know, I'm assuming that $79 million is in the 364 in here? Yeah, okay. So I understand your hands are tied on that because that's a lug that we have no choice but to pay. We have got to pay. We've got to honor that commitment. But I believe we have to bring that lug down.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is in addition to being market competitive of each of the individual programs, is that you would like us to benchmark the total benefits and compensation and be market competitive.
Right. Yes. That's the point I'm trying to make as we go forward. Thank you.
Any other questions? If there are no additional, excuse me, if there's no additional questions, Chairman, that concludes the business of the Governance, Compensation, and Human Resources Committee.
Okay, thank you, Curator Williams. With Todd not being here yet, we will move the Academic and Student Affairs meeting to after the Audit Committee meeting. So we will move on to the Audit Committee meeting. Curator Holloway, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Darrell. The Audit, Compliance, and Ethics Committee has one information item today, and that is the Audit, Compliance, and Ethics Quarterly Report. University of Missouri Chief Audit Compliance Officer, Michelle Pirano, will present this Audit, Compliance, and Ethics Quarterly Report.
Thank you, Curator Holloway. Today I will update you on 4 areas. The status of the rolling audit plan that was approved at the June 2021 Board of Curators meeting, the audit work completed since the February Board of Curators meeting, and the results of our recent work to substantiate implementation of management action plans from previously completed audits. Currently on our rolling audit plan, we have 26 audits and consulting engagements 6 of which have been completed and 7 that are in process. And since February 2022, we have completed a consulting engagement, the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act gap analysis, and 1 audit, the MU Health Insurance Payer website audit. 4 investigations were completed, and we are actively working 5 investigations with 7 internal audit engagements in process. So a little bit about the Graham-Leach-Bliley gap analysis. We performed this to understand current practices compared to regulations and upcoming changes in regulations. So this is part of our compliance work to understand current practices in data regulations. And compliance with GLBA is important for higher education institutions due to their engagement in certain consumer lending activities, such as making federal Perkins loans. Institutions are required to protect student financial aid information by ensuring security and confidentiality. So changes to the regulations were announced last December that will take place December 9th of this year. And one of the changes we're putting in place is to appoint central coordination of the GLBA Act across all 4 universities, and the system compliance will be responsible for this. So this will allow us to bring annual training in line with the new regulations, tailored to address any risks identified during risk assessment, refresh current practices, so we can shift the emphasis more to central IT systems as the primary means of information security and less about the physical controls in the departments. This was at the heart of the changes in the regulations. And this allows us to establish a regulatory change management process for GLBA because we now know the areas responsible for this work and the people who perform this work, and can communicate any changes directly to them. We will also be able to support the Chief Information Security Officer in maintaining appropriate and compliant information security risk assessment and related control assessments. Our next is the MU Health Insurance Payer website audit. And healthcare providers, including MU Health, receive payments for healthcare services from a variety of different payers, including electronic funds transfers from patient health insurance companies through payer portals. This audit came about because we learned of a near-miss incident at Ochsner Health System, where a hacker was able to get into a payer portal and request a change to the ACH routing number for payments to Ochsner. The insurance provider had a very important protocol in place, which was to call the hospital and verify that they indeed wanted a change to their ACH number. So the Ochsner internal audit team developed a program to test other payer sites for similar vulnerabilities, and we thought it would be prudent to look at our payer websites as well. So I'm happy to report that we found no evidence that unauthorized users could change EFTs or bank accounts for the insurance payer sites that we tested. We found some weaknesses in input validation, access controls, and governance, while issues with some of the payer, and while some of these issues could result in improper access to electronic protected health information or personally identifiable information, the probability is low. But MU Health is continuing efforts to work with payers to influence site security by exploring opportunities to improve security and access controls and to improve governance processes internally over these websites. And they are also involving the information security officer as needed. The last thing I'd like to address is the results of our management action plan status as of February 28th, 2020. And we conduct follow-up procedures twice a year to verify the status of these action plans from previously issued audits. And for this period, 31 action items were due across 6 audits, and 71% of the action plans were complete. 9 were given extended due dates at the time, but this number is now down to 7 because 2 action plans have, in the last few weeks, been completed. So it's important that we do this work because our goal is to substantiate the issues were actually addressed and that the fixes were effective. So this concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Michelle?
So you have 7 that are still running, is that correct?
7 action plans.
And then are you building the calendar of the next 2 years, 3 years of audits and action plans? Or is it, once you complete this, you kind of wrap?
Oh, the action plans come from the audits that we completed. We are building for the June meeting.
Okay.
Our audit approach for fiscal year '23.
Okay, thank you. I could not remember how we did it last year.
Yes, so we will have a refresh to the rolling audit plan at that time.
Any other questions? Michelle, I want to thank you and your staff. As you and I have gone over these for the background for the meeting, you've always been very prompt and you have great answers for me. That's considering if I can understand all the answers. But thank you very much. Your staff has been quite timely. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, I need a motion and a second from the Audit Committee to conduct a closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes from the committee.
Okay. Thank you, Curator Holloway. Curator Holbrook, would you like to reconvene the Finance Committee meeting now that?
Yes, sir, Curator Chapman. I would like to reconvene the Finance Committee to deal with the one action item relative to the pension plan. So is there a motion? I'm asking for a motion from the committee and a second from the committee to approve the defined benefit plan financial management strategy for the University of Missouri as outlined in your materials.
So moved, again.
I'll second that.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those that abstain? The motion carries. Mr. Chairman, can we find the right page?
And Curator Holbrook, can I clarify? Jeff,
Yes.
were you abstain? Did you abstain from that vote?
Actually, I think there's.
Recused. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, we move to recommend to the full board that the defined benefit plan financial management strategy for the University of Missouri as outlined in the materials be approved.
Okay, a motion has been made. Do we have a second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right, we have a motion. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? A recusal? Okay, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the business of the Finance Committee today.
Okay, thank you, Curator Holbrook. That was good information, really appreciate it. Now, Curator Graves, are you ready for the academic affairs?
I am, and we don't have a whole lot, but I'll go ahead and get started, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, our first action item this morning is the new collective rules and regulations, 600.090, digital accessibility policy. I'll now hand it over to Amber Cheek, Director of Accessibility and ADA in the MU Office of Institutional Equity.
Thank you, Curator Graves. Digital accessibility is the ability of a website or a software program to be usable by a wide range of people, including people with disabilities. For example, a student with dyslexia might use a text-to-speech assistive technology program to read out loud content from one of our websites. A student with a vision disability may need to zoom in on the small text when they're registering for classes online. Use of these assistive technologies is very common, and when software and digital communications online aren't accessible, we're creating a barrier for those students and employees who need those accessibility features. Digital accessibility is key to student retention and success. I often compare this to the accessibility of our buildings. We would never build a new building at one of our universities that didn't have an accessible entrance for a student who is a wheelchair user. And digital accessibility really is no different. We need to strategically build up the accessibility of our digital campus, just as we do our physical campuses. This proposed CRR on digital accessibility will bring us into alignment with the changing environment and with many peer institutions who already have similar policies. But this policy also simply formalizes and supports work that is already happening at all 4 of our universities. This policy will be key to helping us move this work forward proactively to ensure a greater level of access and equal opportunity for all students. The proposed CRR will do 3 things. First, it will support the creation of policies and procedures that will ensure that we develop and purchase technology products that are accessible. Second, it will spur the creation of new guidance, shared resources, and education on digital accessibility. And third, it will create a System Digital Accessibility Committee, which will create shared resources, foster collaboration between staff at all of our universities, and help steer strategic accessibility improvements in the long term. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee?
Go ahead.
I don't have a question, but thank you for doing this. I think it's overdue and good work.
Is there a cost? Are we going to have to buy a bunch of software?
Always a very good question. The Digital Accessibility Committee will perhaps make recommendations in the future around budget, but our first priority is to ensure that we're fully utilizing and sharing the resources that we already have at all 4 universities by promoting collaboration and those shared resources and shared processes. The best example of this is with procurement of software, for example. These policies will make sure that when we are procuring new software, it is software that is accessible and high quality and would be a good investment for student success, rather than software that is of poor quality and wouldn't be a good investment for student success.
But we're not going to go out and do a wholesale software repurchase?
No.
Okay.
No. This work is gradual and very, very, very long-term.
Thank you.
If I make a comment, over the past year, I know you've worked very closely with students, faculty, and staff on your committee, so thank you, and thank you. Congratulations on getting it to this point.
Any other questions? All right, if there is no further discussion, may I have a motion second from the committee that the new collected rules and regulations 600.090 digital accessibility policy be approved?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Academic, Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the new collected rules and regulations 600.090 digital accessibility policy be approved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Back to you, Curator.
All right, our last action item this morning is for an executive session of the committee. I would now entertain a motion second from the committee to hold a committee meeting in closed session this afternoon.
So moved.
All right, there's been a We have a motion and a second. Cindy, could you call the roll of the committee, please?
Curator Graves?
Yes?
Curator Hobrock?
Yes.
Curator Lehman? Yes. Curator Winokur?
Yes.
All right, all votes in favor.
All right, Mr. Chairman, that concludes the public session for the Academic, Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee.
Okay, thank you, Curator Graves. Curator Winokur, I now turn it over to you for the Health Affairs Chair report.
Great, thank you so much. Good morning. The Health Affairs Committee met on April 14th. We had 6 information items and 1 action item. Dr. Rick Barron, Executive Vice Chancellor for Health Affairs, will present a summary of these presentations for us this morning. And from these reports, you will see the continued accomplishments and opportunities from U Healthcare, the School of Medicine, and NextGen. Dr. Barron.
Microphone.
I think it's on now.
There we go.
Let me begin by sharing some leadership recruitment updates. To begin with, I'm pleased to share that Nim Chinaya joins the EVC for Health Affairs Office as the Vice Chancellor for Health Affairs. Nim has been working with us full-time since March 1st. He will be relocating to Colombia next week and will be in the office on May 2nd. Some of you have met Nim before. He's been a consultant and a strategist for the system, serving MU Healthcare and the campus and my office. Having him on board now, having him on board full-time really accelerates our strategic planning, growth, and senior leadership across the board. A really exciting new hire is in the School of Medicine is Dr. Michael Jakoyne, who joins our faculty in June. Mike will be our inaugural chair of the newly formed Department of Neurosurgery in the School of Medicine, and his specialty is brain tumors. This addition to our team means that the Ellis Fischel Cancer Center has a talented surgeon to treat a variety of brain cancers in mid-Missouri. We attracted Dr. Jakoyne from WashU with our next-gen imaging core facilities and the opportunity for him to expand clinical and research capabilities and to lead a department. So we're really excited about this. It's a major recruitment for the School of Medicine and the hospital. Katrina Lambrecht will join MU Healthcare team as the Chief Operating Officer, and she arrives May 9th. Katrina has a wealth of experience in healthcare, and her background offers MU Healthcare the skills to fill really needed leadership in a number of critical areas. Now, I want to update you on 3 additional searches that are underway. We continue to search for a senior chief of marketing and communications, and this search is being led by Cameron Farwell, Vice Chancellor Farwell, and it's progressing, but it's a very tight market for professionals at this level of skill and experience. But Cameron, thank you very much for leading this search. Also, Julia Settles has done an amazing job stepping in as the interim Chief Compliance Officer, and I want to sincerely thank her for her service. She desires to return to her directorship of risk management full-time. So we've started a search for that position as well. And Michelle Peranio, the System Vice Chancellor of Compliance, has generously agreed to chair this important search. So again, thank you, Michelle. We are also restarting our search for the Chief Compliance Officer at MU Healthcare. Now, in collaboration with President Choi, the Vice Chancellor of Research, Tom Spencer, and Provost Ramchan, I'm really excited to report that we have begun a search for the next Executive Director for the Next Gen Precision Health Initiative. It's really been my distinct privilege to serve as the inaugural Executive Director, and I've had the good fortune to see the planning, the construction of the opening of the Roy Blunt Next Gen Precision Health Building. This is a jewel of a resource serving as a magnet to attract the highest quality successful researchers both nationally and internationally in Missouri, as we've just seen with Dr. Jakoyne. We are seeking a scientist in one of the next-gen focus areas to lead the enterprise forward so that we can achieve our goal of both improving the research profile and improving the health of Missourians. So that search is currently underway. We continue to move ahead with occupancy of the laboratory space of the building. 6 faculty, 4 newly recruited scientists, and 2 current Mizzou investigators will be part of the next wave of scientists in the building by this summer. I'm excited to share our news that the build-out of the Innovation Tower that includes collaborative space for our business partners, and also our state-of-the-art clinical translational science unit will open next month. In its beautiful space, and next time you're on campus, I would love to show you through it. And as expected, the demand for laboratory space and access to the resources housed in the building have accelerated our need to finish out the 4th floor shell space, and that plan build-out is proceeding. So I'm sure you've all heard the national news regarding Oracle and its move to buy Cerner Corporation. It's somewhat early in the acquisition process, but we are closely monitoring this situation to ensure that our informatics and operational dependence on the Cerner electronic health record platform remains stable and meets our current needs. So last Friday, on April 15th, President Choi, myself, and other leaders met with Cerner's new CEO, David Feinberg, to learn more about this development and to further strengthen our relationship. Dr. Feinberg told us clearly that Cerner is committed to our partnership and to the Tiger Institute. In addition, he told us that Oracle, assuming the merger occurs as planned, is very enthusiastic about getting into the healthcare industry, and it wants to improve the Cerner product line. This was extremely reassuring news to all of us. It was a great meeting, and as a result of that meeting, we developed 5 working dyads on new projects with Cerner to advance our EHR capabilities and to conduct research and deliver the best possible care to our patients. So I am excited to show you progress photos of the new Children's Hospital project. It's beginning to really take shape, and the excavation and foundation work has progressed without a hitch. It's done so well that we have not had to tap into any planned contingency funds. So I'm pleased to tell you that we were able to build the added Skybridge feature in this architect's photo that will connect to the physician's office building, which then connects to the next-gen building, so it'll be a seamless connection from the entire hospital complex to the physician's office building and the next-gen building. So this space, as you can see in the bottom photo, along with the bright, open, welcoming lobby for patients and families, will provide a positive and healing environment for our families. We're excited to bring the best innovations in care for children and their families to Mid-Missouri. Here's some information that summarizes the results of the Phase 1 consolidation integration update and bringing children's services from the current Women and Children's Hospital to the MUHC main campus. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we are very pleased with the move. Went as planned, and our campus staff and resources have adapted and absorbed these important services and lines of care. And Phase 2 basically is when we open the new building in 2024. This is a summary slide of MU Healthcare financial performance for this year. The March year-to-date operating income is $29.7 million on a budget of $65.4 million. So our operating margin year-to-date is 2.3 compared to a budget of 6.3. We've done some projections, and We believe that our projected income is estimated at the end of June to be between $49 million and $55 million on a budget of $87 million. And that would be an estimated operating margin of 2.9 to 3.4% compared to the original budget of 6.3. Now, those numbers do not include the CARES funding, which has been $12.7 million on top of that, which gets us a bit closer to the 87.4, but still short. So why? We had to make market adjustments that were implemented in January for job titles with very high vacancy rates. We had to rely on travelers' agency staff to address these vacancies, especially in nursing and respiratory care. Missouri Medicaid implemented changes of purchasing outpatient medications that resulted in a significant increase in drug costs. And very significantly, we had operating room deferrals in January and February that were due to COVID, when we had the last surge of COVID, as well as weather. So we had COVID days and snow days that resulted in lack of operating time and clinic visits. So how are we going to address this? We've renegotiated our travelers' agency rates from $180 an hour to $107 an hour. In addition, we implemented an internal agency model called Tiger Flex, which we've told you about before, which is our own versions of travelers' agency. So this allows regional nurses who want to some of the travelers' agency benefits to stay here locally. And to date, we've hired 8 nurses into this program. I think this was a question asked at the HAC meeting. 8 doesn't sound like a lot, but the good news is that we have 48 of these nurses in the pipeline, and we're processing their paperwork. And our target was 50. So for each nurse that we put on our Tiger Flex program instead of travelers, we save $90,000 annually. And if we can do it for all 50 nurses, and we may exceed that, we'll see, that would save $4.3 million annually. We refined our OR scheduling so we can handle the backlog of cases that were deferred in January and February. And this resulted in being able to absorb 1/3 of the missed cases in January and February, and we're working very hard to capture as many of the ones that we lost as possible, and we think we'll be able to get most of them. We increased our clinic volumes year to date in March, and we are above budget for clinic visits, and thus we've been recapturing the visits and delays that happened because of COVID and because of the winter snowstorms. And we're also managing some supply chain expenses better, and we think that we can get a 5% reduction of supply chain costs in quarter 4. Let's talk a bit about medical students. Match Day is always a very exciting event for everyone and emotional. Some of you may have seen it when it was streamed live. We're pleased that our match rate exceeds the national average, and that means our medical students continue on to residency in their top choices. There's also something called Second Look Weekend, and these are for fourth-year undergraduates who have applied and been accepted to medical school, and they've been accepted to our medical school, but they've also been accepted to other medical schools around the country. So we have this weekend where they can come on campus to get a second look at MU and the School of Medicine. It's a great event, and I attended, and here's a picture of a number of these very talented senior undergraduates from around the country with me and with Truman, and I'm hoping that most of these students will ultimately pick the University of Missouri School of Medicine. A recent national award that's noteworthy that I wanted to share with you, Dr. Russ Waitman leads the Greater Plains Collaborative, which pulls together electronic health records from 8 states across the central and western portion of the United States. It safely and securely links over 34 million people's health information records. This project puts Mizzou front and center on the national stage of driving the use of the electronic health data to solve our greatest health challenges. And what I put on this slide is all of the academic health centers and some are like Intermountain in Utah, are a huge community health center, and they all have MU as the leader of this project with Dr. Waitman. It's really exciting and definitely puts MU on the map in this field. Let's talk a bit about transition into the new EVC Health Affairs Dean role. So let me first say that I am really honored by the support of President Choi and Provost Ramchan, honored that they have in my ability to unify the EVC and Dean's offices. It's really a privilege. It's a great, great privilege to assume this responsibility. So I am working every day to ensure a smooth transition with Dean Zweig. Some say this role is too big, but that's really a constant criticism of anyone in a position at my level, as many of the other leaders here. But as you all know, this is not going to be just me. It'll be a team effort, and I'll partner with leaders in the Dean's office, with leaders and teams in the School of Medicine and MU Healthcare to pursue excellence. I plan to drive us to an exciting future while being respectful of our past and guided by our values. So I do want to say that as a Missourian, my purpose in moving to Colombia was to make the University of Missouri School of Medicine and MU Healthcare well-respected, nationally recognized as a healthcare center. That includes hiring and retaining knowledge and thought leaders across the spectrum in healthcare, providing outstanding customer-friendly, patient-friendly service, and to make our research programs deliver in meeting the greatest needs of Missourians. While change is not easy, I am confident that with support and partnerships in place that we will thrive and be able to accomplish these goals. So much of what I just shared would not be possible were it not for Steve Zweig. It's really difficult to adequately describe what a tremendous asset and impact Steve has had on MU School of Medicine over his many years of service. I'd like to share the comments that I shared at the Health Affairs Committee because I think they're worth repeating. I've also added Steve's timeline since he went to college. He did go to Harvard, pretty impressive, but then the rest of his career was all at the University of Missouri. And he's a native St. Louisan, like I am. As Dean, Steve has really met every challenge thoughtfully, and he's kept the interest of our students, our faculty, and our patients front and center. He combines expert clinical acumen with vision and a true commitment to helping MU to build the strongest programs in medicine possible. Under his leadership, our students are achieving high levels of success. He's been instrumental in key recruiting efforts that have strengthened our education, research, and service missions, and he is engaged in a very positive collaboration with MUHC by sharing strategic planning that bridges between both critical aspects of our health and our healthcare infrastructure. So there will be a number of events honoring Dean Zweig's service as June approaches. But I want to take this opportunity in this public forum, even though Steve's not here, he may be listening, if you would join me in thanking Steve Zweig for his service to the University of Missouri. And finally, this is my last slide. So in conclusion, we have a very, very bright future at the School of Medicine and MUHC, but we do have challenges that we need to meet and opportunities that we need to seize. Like many other healthcare systems rebounding from COVID, unexpected winter weather rescheduling, and the ongoing challenges of keeping and attracting healthcare staff is difficult. We are creating new options that can help us with staffing. We're looking for efficiencies and consolidation to make us more cost-effective, and we are laser-focused on improving the patient experience. That's going to be one of the big focuses of mine as I take on this combined role and continue to have MU Healthcare report to me as well. So we need to recruit, both faculty and staff. We need to recruit more clinical faculty to see our patients. We need to recruit more research faculty to make new discoveries. By doing that, we will improve and grow our healthcare enterprise, and we will become financially stable, and we will be recognized in our state and across the nation as a leader in healthcare. It's a privilege to lead MU Healthcare and the School of Medicine, and I would like to thank President Choi and Provost Ramchan and all of the curators for your support. And I'm open to any questions. Thank you. Curator Winokur.
Okay, thank you for including information in today's presentation that responded to some of the questions from April 14th. I really appreciate that update. As you heard at our committee meeting, Dr. Barron shared we were also able to, as Dr. Barron shared, we were also able to acknowledge Mizzou Dean of Medicine, Steve Zweig, as he retires as Dean this June and returns to his practice. So thank you for emphasizing that. The only action of the Health Affairs Committee was to approve the minutes of the January 27th meeting, which was unanimously approved by the committee last Thursday. One last shot to ask Dr. Barron a question.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
So you mentioned the CFO search. Is that position currently open?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, oh, no, I'm sorry. We're currently searching. The CFO is Kay Davis.
Right, that's what I.
And she's still there. She's work with her every single day, and she's agreed to stay on until we fill that position.
Wonderful. What's our timeline on that, roughly?
I wish we would have had that person in place by now. So the first pool of candidates just wasn't what we needed. And so we are changing search firms and getting another pool of candidates.
A second question, if you don't mind. You mentioned that about 43% of the students who graduate are staying here in Missouri.
Yes.
Which is wonderful. Of course, I wish it was 100, but do we have, is there anything we can do on our end to help keep those?
I think 43% is pretty good. I wish it was over 50%. I do think that by growing our clinical programs and our research programs with nationally recognized thought leaders, that will attract more of our students to stay. For example, when you have someone of Michael Jakoyne's caliber now moving from WashU to MU, leading a new department of neurosurgery, a med student who wants to go into neurosurgery would really have to think twice before going somewhere else with that type of leader in place. And if we can have leaders like that in all of our clinical departments, I think we will do even better in retaining our medical students. So I'm working on that.
Thank you.
President Choi, you were going to respond to the question about the CFO.
We think it's going to take about 6 to 9 months to hire a CFO.
Okay, great. Thank you to Dr. Barron and
Thank you.
team. Additionally, we have added a report at each meeting of the Health Affairs Committee this year from each university in the University of Missouri system regarding academic medicine and the medical research being conducted on their campus. In 2022, we've had reports so far from Umkc and Missouri S&T at our first 2 meetings, and we look forward to hearing from Umso and Mizzou later this year. And we welcome Curator Lehman to the Health Affairs Committee. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the business of the Health Affairs Committee.
Okay, thank you, Curator Winokur. I'm pleased to now turn over the podium to Chancellor Dangani to hear more about the exciting work and initiatives going on at Missouri S&T.
Thank you, Chair Chapman. Thank you all for being here after 3 years. This is my first opportunity to welcome all of you to the campus. I believe the last time everybody was here was 2019, and we were all geared up on 2020 where we were told to stand down. So welcome, everybody. And also, thank you all who were present in our groundbreaking ceremonies for our exciting new Student Innovation Center. I'd like to give you an overview of the university, hopefully provide a helicopter view of what goes on here and what are our future plans as we move forward. So I'll try to give you a highlight of what's our vision, direction, and North Star goals, and some of the recognitions that we have received, the student highlights, faculty accomplishments, research update, what is going on at the Comer Institute, and building and construction projects, the biggest headache every campus could have, but the necessary headache that we must have. And then the most exciting initiative from my perspective is the Manufacturing Missouri ecosystem, the MME. Very much excited about that, and some highlights about the fundraising activities. So as you know, our vision, of course, is to become a board-renowned science and technology institution. We have established a sense of direction for our campus, as I've always believed that institutions like individuals need to have a sense of direction, and ours is what we refer to as our North Star. Very well-defined goals, milestones. The 4 R's are what we talk about every day: ranking, recognition, of course, retention, recruitment, and research are what we are focused on. You've seen some of our horizon goals, and some of them are over the horizon goals. In research, we want to become a Carnegie R1 university. To be clear, the level of research that we do is at R1 research, but becoming a Carnegie R1 means breadth as well as depth, and we are trying to achieve that. Our enrollment, the biggest challenge for every university nowadays, given all the demographics that's happening, we want to become a campus of 12,000, 8,000 undergraduates and 4,000 graduate students. And then we like to achieve our retention. We are currently, for us, we are at about 85%. That's a significant improvement for our freshman to sophomore level, which we were about 80% attrition of about 20%. This past year, we were at 85%, and we are hoping to get to over 90% in short time and 95% in longer time period. So with that, I'd like to highlight some of our student activities. As you know, we attract some of the brightest students in the state of Missouri and across the country and the world, as a matter of fact, to our university. And here is some of the enrollment trend. I wanted you to see where we are. Of course, like everybody else, we had the challenge of COVID. But if you compare our deposited numbers, not to last year, as I mentioned earlier, last year was an anomaly because it was the very first year that we announced the Comer Vanguard scholarships. And the catch there was that the deposits were refundable. So we had about 1,200 applicants for the Comer scholarships. And when they didn't receive, we could only offer about 500. We offered to 462. Those who didn't receive the Comer scholarship then withdrew. And of course, since the deposits were refundable, our numbers tanked after a significant interest in the enrollment. But I'd like to focus your attention to our trend between this year and 2020 and 2019. And as President Choi highlighted the numbers, we believe our numbers are really sustainable. That 1131 that you see is actually 11, I believe, 40 or so as of this morning. We keep track every hour of every day on where we go with these things. Another notable number there is our applicants. So for the first time, we've gone over 6,000 applications, and we are really excited about that trend. These are some of the numbers that has given rise to the recognition of this university in every survey that is done, national survey, Georgetown University, Princeton Review, Pay Scale, and all of those, that puts us in the top 5 of the universities across the country, and that's because of the numbers that you see. Average starting salary of $65,000, master's about 80, and PhDs about 100,000. The number to write home about is really the next number, 100% employee satisfaction 7 years in a row. And we are really, really proud of that number. And as you know, we have record number of companies that come to campus to recruit our students, and our students get multiple offers. And that's really the hallmark of this university. The other set of numbers are also telling, where our students graduate with an average debt that is less than half of their first year's income. And that's not very common across the country. Notice that our tuition is below $9,000, and that's also a remarkable number from my perspective. And out-of-state tuition is similar. It looks big, $27,000, but when you compare it to other states, that is also on the lower scale of tuition charges that we do. Some other highlights of our student activities. I don't know what some of our students eat for breakfast, but when you see the activities, here, Ian Buffington, and Ian is spelled properly. For him, he spells it at EAN. He is the national winner of the Air Force ROTC All-American Scholars. There is one in the country, and he is the winner of it. I love the quote that he said to us, "I've been challenged academically beyond what you could have convinced high school me was possible." And here is a person who's won the National Air Force ROTC All-American Award. Significant recognition. Here's a chemical engineering, Anna Baldes, National Award for the 1 foot cubic water purifier. So mechanicals have their cars that they're designed, their Mars rovers that we won the national award. Our chemical engineers won the national award for 1 cubic foot water purifier. I think that's a notable award. Every time you have a student group wins a national award, I believe that is remarkable. Our Army Ranger Challenge team, these guys are absolutely wonderful. We had the Army ROTC in this very room, actually, a couple nights ago, and they were all here. They are going to the West Point Military Academy to compete on military skills. And they were 176 teams. 14 were selected for the national competition, and our team is one of them. The last time they competed, they were number 4 in the nation. They have significantly improved, quote unquote, by their coaches, and we are very much hopeful, and hopefully at the future presentation, I'll tell you that they are also the national award winners. This is a real cool one. So our metallurgists, mining and metallurgy students, have won the national award to from the SME, Society of Minerals, Metals, and Materials, for the sword that they forged right here on campus. Everything that you see on that picture, except for the red velvet, was manufactured by them. The whole thing, we have a terrific foundry here, and we still teach iron smithing and steel making. In fact, as many of you know, our steel making research has won DOE and DOD awards, $40 million last year, and they'll be the first group that move into the Protoplex, our manufacturing building. But they competed in Anaheim, California, and they brought home the gift. That sword is available in their department if you ever want to see it. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. They have manufactured it here. So highlighting some of our faculty accomplishments, President Choi highlighted Dr. Gertich, who has won the $2 million NASA award for mining the moon. But I wanted to highlight that that proposal was truly a multidisciplinary. The other two faculty members that you see is Dr. Frank Hahn, who is a professor of aeronautical engineering here, and Dr. Fatemeh Rezai, who's a chemical engineering faculty members. So that is really, really exciting. You know, the space is the next frontier when it comes to mining. And not only moon, also the meteors, and there is a whole bunch of buzz about what's going on. And we won the NASA's $2 million award to facilitate mining of the moon, if you will. So it's the next gold rush for the mining engineers. Dr. Hahn, incidentally, has won the U.S. Air Force Young Investigator Award. This is really, really amazing to me. It's how do you maneuver spacecraft in a space very smoothly. You know this here is electrospray propulsion systems. Some of you may be aware of the plasma pulse propulsion that we used to have and just gave kicks to every direction of the space vehicles. And Dr. Hahn is perfecting that phenomenon, really. Really interesting award that U.S. Air Force had recognized him as a Young Investigator Award right here at Missouri S&T. And of course, Dr. Anthony Convertine, again, President Choi mentioned him. He is working on functionalizing the nanoparticles for drug delivery. So if you will, these are nanoparticles that can be functionalized by radioactive material and chemotherapy material and be targeted for metastasized cancers. And he was introduced to the National Academy of Inventors for that work, and he has NSF award working on that research as well. So we don't have a school of medicine, but we enable schools of medicine and delivery of healthcare. And believe it or not, we have biologists here on campus, and from mining the moon all the way to saving the butterflies. So Dr. Niranjan Krishnan has won a U.S. Department of Agriculture award to study the effect of toxics on butterflies. And she's really a chemist at heart, but a assistant professor of research in our biological sciences department. And we are proud of the fact that we have 4 NSF Career Award faculty members here. As you know, Career Award is the most prestigious award for young investigators. Requirements are that they must be an assistant professor, 5 years from PhD. They have 3 chances to win the award, and we have 4 of them. And fortunately, all 4 are here. And You know that what I refer to is that as soon as faculty win awards of this nature, then they become targets, of other university. They are all here. I am happy to report, as a matter of fact, last week we had our trustees meeting right here in this building, and our trustees had done a deep dive on retention of faculty, and we had lost 6% in the last 2 years compared to every one of our peer universities that have lost an average of 16%. So our faculty win awards like this and stay. So I think that's also frankly a feather in our cap for doing that. Taking faculty away is a national fashion now from other universities. And to be clear, we do the same thing. We just hired 2 faculty members from Notre Dame. It is keep yours and get others as well. That's the challenge. A little bit of research update. Again, President Choi highlighted some of the numbers. The numbers in the box, the last column, is that we still have 2.5 months to go. The trend is positive, but the volume is not sufficient. As you know, one of our goals is that we want to become an R1, and R1, there are 104 R1 universities in the country, and their average research expenditure is about $100 million. Now, that's obviously a challenge for us because we are an institute of technology. We do a lot of research in our CASB as well, but our CASB programs have technology at their core as well. So that's a challenge for us, but our trend is good. The quality of research that we do is good, but the volume needs to improve. And I'm glad to notice that Dr. Kamal Kayat is in the audience as well. He's our Vice Chancellor for Research. Kamal has been at this position for all of 6 months, but we are very much hopeful that things will increase in volume. Again, this is research expenditure by fiscal year. So you can see the whole of 21, 20, 19, and 18 amounts, and where we are, 25.7 million this year up to this point. I believe the data is as of 4/18. So we still have 2.5 months to go, and we are very much hopeful that we'll surpass our last year's number. Again, you see the trend is positive, but the volume is not where it needs to be, and we need to improve that. And President Choi reminds me regularly on that, the volume, size of research, and duly noted. Here is the whole year, the total amount at this time of the year. So you can see the trend that is positive. In FY 2022, we are at 24.5, compared with 22.8 and 21.7. So again, good trend. Here's I think a trend that speaks highly for us. Notice the portion of our research that is done that is really industry relevant. Okay, we like to think of our research as solution-inspired research, application-driven research. And you'll see the blue portion is the portion of the total research expenditure compared to the total is the whole chart, and the blue segment is the research that we do in collaboration with industry. And you can compare ourselves with Colorado School of Mines, Illinois Tech, and you can see that our portion is the largest. In other words, relevant research rather than hypothesis-driven research. Another indication that we are an institute of technology as well. We keep talking about money, expenditure, awards, grants, and all of that. But of course, research is more than that. And this chart compares us with our peer institutions when it comes to scholarly activities and research. That includes journal publications, citations, conference proceedings, books that are written. And you can see where we are with our peer universities, Colorado School of Mines, New Jersey Institute of Technology, University of Alabama, Birmingham. Some of these institutions have gotten lifts from being in the neighborhood of places like NASA and so on. But you look at, for example, the citations between 2015 and 19. We are second to Colorado School of Mines, and that means who references the research that's done in advancing their own research. And you can see where we sit. So again, money is important. We are cognizant of that. We need money to provide for our graduate students, doctoral fellows, and all of that. But a scholarship is more than that, and I wanted to highlight that as well for you. Let me talk a little bit about the Comer Institute. You know, Fred had 3 mandates for us: elevate Missouri S&T, have economic impact, and have broad STEM outreach for the kids of Missouri. And that every action, every decision we make in the Comer Institute, it's guided by these 3 principles that Fred put in front of us. So I quickly want to remind you of every element of the Comer Institute: 4 national centers of excellence in advanced manufacturing, resource sustainability, resilient infrastructure, artificial intelligence, and autonomous systems. Every other day, we have candidates for our dean positions of centers of excellence of our departments. It's to the point where we have to be careful not to overlap them on the 2 days. So that speaks about the level of effort that our faculty and staff are under, just in our recruiting processes. Frankly, it's actually a major challenge for us, and I was delighted to hear that we are not alone in that challenge, and Mizzou is going through similar. We've had quote-unquote failed searches, but we continue shoulder to wheel, push that agenda because it's very, very important. We have one of the center directors in place, one of the Notre Dame recruits, and I thought I saw Rich here as well. And one is almost imminent. We have made the offer. We're waiting to receive the response. 2 others are in the midst of the interview processes and all of that. As you know, we are establishing a whole new college of Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Economic Development, and we are very much hopeful that we have identified a dean for the newcomer college. And that college, as you know, it's really at the confluence area of science and technology and social sciences, economics, and all of that. Think of it as a school of business, but don't think of it as a school of business. The graduates of that college will not go work for banks. They will go run industrial entities. So they are exposed to elements of financial management and accounting and all of that, but they are technologists who will go out there and run industrial companies. We have, I mentioned, 500 undergraduate scholarships. 500. We have 462 undergraduate scholarships enabled by Fred and June Comer's gift. That sounds like a government program, folks, when you're at 500 scholarships. 100 Comer doctoral fellows. That's also a challenge for us, recruiting 100 doctoral fellows, and our motto there is quality before expediency. So we are building that up in a gradual manner, in a graded manner. 20 endowed faculty and chaired positions, and 12 Comer Ignition grants. These are the grants to enable larger scale proposals that are going to be submitted to the national funding organizations. Some of the activities for the Comer Outreach summer camps, which are nationally renowned, our summer camps here on campus. 2 vans, we're calling them mobile STEM labs. These are going to be functionalized to go to all 114 counties and expose, introduce engineering and science to high schoolers across the state of Missouri, so then they become inquisitive about what does Missouri S&T do. Field trips, after school programs, teacher conferences and workshops. We bring teachers to campus. Believe it or not, we have science teachers across the state that have not been in a physics lab in 20 years. We are trying to rectify that program thanks to the Comer gift that has enabled that. Research experience for teachers and students, and then community outreach programs, many activities there that I wanted to highlight. Just for you to get a sense of 13 summer camps that we have, here are the highlights. We keep increasing the capacity. I believe this year we are accepting 700 summer camp students, and as of Monday, I heard that we are near capacity on those, and we try to increasing them. The note here is the fact that the yield from summer campus students to this campus is about 70%. When they come here and they spend time on campus, eat in our cafeterias and spend time in our laboratories, interact with our students and faculty and so on, then of course they are sold, and the yield here is significant for us. I don't need to say much about buildings. Again, you were at the groundbreaking ceremonies for the building on the left. Next year we will have groundbreaking ceremonies, if not earlier, for our Welcome Center, which is going to be adjacent to our Student Innovation Center, and the space in between will become a promenade, a beautiful, campus promenade that it's going to be really the central place for all of the student activities. And then, of course, we are very much excited about our Protoplex building, the manufacturing building. Frankly, the arrival district is out of my head. We are now focused on manufacturing because this is really the next step for a university like us. If we want to increase our research volume, if we want to engage the manufacturing companies in the state of Missouri, the new manufacturing campus is a must for us. All you have to do is look at what Michigan has done, look at what Illinois has done, look at what Pennsylvania has done with their Techno Center, and so on. And this is a must for the state of Missouri. What you see on the right-hand picture, every red dot is a manufacturing company in the state of Missouri. And the key to know this is that over 90% of these companies employ fewer than 100 people. So they don't have the bandwidth to have their own R&D facilities, and yet they need R&D if they are to develop their next line of products. And we are hoping that our MME, Manufacture Missouri ecosystem, which is a distributed entity, it is us, other universities, and many companies across the state of Missouri, will become the destination of choice for those companies to come in here and get answers to their questions of materials and methods and processes and data and all of that. The second element of that whole Manufacture Missouri ecosystem is our campus, our entire campus. That's a 15, 20-year plan. And the third element is the very first building, which is the Protoplex building. You've seen this picture. We are almost there. We have $50 million of Comer money in there. We have another $47 million from the state, and we are working on the balance. The total cost is $103 million. And of course, as all of us know, that number keeps on escalating given the situation that's going on right now. But it's a 220,000 square foot high bay conference, classroom, facilities. Some companies are already signing up to be a part of this. We have many, many small companies that are a part of the consortium that want to be involved with this, but we have companies that want to reside in these facilities. GE Aviation is one that we are working with. Honeywell is another one that we are working with, and all of that. So the groundbreaking ceremony for this, you will be invited on that. It's going to be early next year. And this is a chart that you have seen before, does not need to be said. The impact of an investment like this, $100 million in 25 years, will have a $3.5 billion of impact on the economy of the state. And with that, you see a picture of some of our most generous donors. On the left-hand side, of course, is Fred and June Comer. On the right-hand side, top figure is Tim and Kay Bradley, who gave us a significant gift for the Arrival District. And then Bipin and Linda Doshi, who gave us $10 million to name our chemical and biochemical engineering program. So now you know everything that I know, and I'll be delighted to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chancellor Dangani. Great presentation. We're very proud of all the accomplishments of the faculty and students at S&T. Any questions for Chancellor Dangani? Thank you, Chancellor Dangani. Okay, that concludes the morning session of our meeting. We're now going to break for lunch, at which time we'll have the pleasure to visit with students from Missouri S&T in the room right next door to us. Enjoy interacting with the students and each other, and we'll plan to reconvene the meeting at 12:30. So 1 hour for lunch. We'll be back here at 12:30. See you then.